The right path isn't always the easy one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for Disney World to number 7, Pocahontas. So Pocahontas is sort of an oddity of the Disney Renaissance. Despite its popularity at the time, I'd often view it as sort of like the black sheep of the Renaissance era, honestly. They're the ones made by Disney Toon Studios, and there's the main ones. I've done a video about Disney Toon Studios before, so I won't go too deep into that one. But when you think of the Disney Renaissance, you really think of films that were universally loved and have withstood the test of time, that everyone talks about. Everyone has their favorite scenes that they talk about. You have people that love to talk about the fight at the end of Beauty and the Beast between Beast and Gaston, or talking about just Gaston as how terrible he is as a person, or how great Lumiere is, or go to Aladdin and talk about Never Had a Friend Like Me, Jafar and Iago and their dynamic, the beautiful songs in The Lion King, the decision about whether or not Ariel is a good person at the end of the day. Pocahontas, all it really had going for it by a certain point was a gif with Kocoum running frantically out of the bushes. And remember that happened? It was great. It was hilarious, but that's all anyone ever talks about. And I sort of started thinking, well, what is wrong with this movie? And it's not the production values. This movie is beautiful. This is a work of art, some of Disney's best work, if not its best, depending on who you ask. And coming off The Lion King, you would think that there was nowhere to go but up from here. The Lion King was this really great, beautiful masterpiece that sort of summed up everything the Disney Renaissance could be and what it should be and what every Disney film after it should have been striving for. It was, to quote Darla Dimple in Cats Don't Dance, it was big and loud in the way that it's supposed to be. But here, it just sort of feels like we've dropped a couple of balls here, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it, hearing interviews, hearing Roger Ebert talk about it. And honestly, I think the problem is this movie is too prolific. And by that I mean this movie very much wants to take a moment from history and tell a story. The problem is, among other things, this story never happened. And what I mean is, there's only one thing about John Smith and Pocahontas' interaction that we know more than likely happened, at least from what I've been able to discern. And that was that they at one point did meet. Or at the very least, he met her father. Now, the story that he gave was that he had been taken by the Native Americans of that tribe and was set to lose his head. But Pocahontas, apparently just as is done in this movie, throws herself onto him to stop her father, and everything's fine from there. John Smith's treatment of the Native American people is pretty in line with the movie here. He's got some opinions, but he's not really all that excited about doing anything, really. But the historical implications are sort of all over the place and accurate for the most part. But that also isn't the problem. The problem is, when I say prolific, I mean you can't really have a lot of room to play with these characters in the way you think you would with characters like Belle or Jasmine or Aladdin or the Genie or Eric, and that's because they aren't real characters in the sense that they don't exist in history. Maybe someone like Arthur has existed. Maybe someone like Merlin existed. Maybe someone like Aladdin, outside of the 80s existed. But we know for a fact that Pocahontas and John Smith have existed. We know they're very important figures in American history. And because of that, this movie does want to pay as much respect as possible to that, but that's not how a Disney movie operates. A Disney movie is supposed to be this really fun experience, and this movie wants to pay due respect, but it's not really putting in that same effort in the story as it does to its production values. When you think of a Disney film, you really want to think of something that will withstand the test of time more than Kocoum becoming a GIF or a GIF. Doesn't matter. And this movie feels so out of place sometimes when you think about it. It often feels like it wants to be like Anastasia. Anastasia is also a bit of a historically inaccurate film, but Anastasia knew how to have fun with itself for one reason or another. And Here, it's taking a lot of liberties from a Disney movie. In other words, the animals don't talk here, which is weird for a Disney movie. I mean, we haven't had quiet animals in a Disney film since what? Well, not the Sword and the Stone. The Black Cauldron? Might have been the Black Cauldron. Technically, it could be Robin Hood because there are no humans, just animals. But whatever. The music is it's very theatrical, but there's no bounce to it. The sort of bounce we expect from other movies. That's because again, this takes itself very seriously. We'll see another film that we will talk about that fits this mold rather well. But if I had to compare this movie to anything, it would have to be Ferngully, The Last Rainforest. And by that I mean these two films are each talking about different subject matters. Ferngully's talking about nature, protecting trees. Trees are good. Don't pollute the forest. Tim Curry's good in anything. And this one here is speaking the evils of colonialism, which, yeah, the 90s, we could use a bit more information on that, I guess. And following your own path, that seems to be the lesson Pocahontas is trying to reach, or she knows, but has to convince other people, and then Kocoum dies. It's weird. It's weird. But maybe we're missing something. So let's just sort of break our two leads down and try to figure them out. So John Smith, like I said before, is a lot like Zach from Ferngully, because both Zach and John Smith are really just two guys out doing a job. It's kind of it. They don't really have any strong feelings about it one way or another. But then they meet this person, this really cute person, really good-looking person, and then he is then #woke, I guess, into thinking, you know what, this is wrong. We shouldn't be here. Or something along those lines. These aren't savages. We kind of are the savages. So we haven't done anything yet. We're just digging. But that's kind of it for his character. I mean, you can argue like he's this well-traveled guy who's been around, and he knows things, and he's never been anywhere special before, but now he's come here, and he's met this girl, and she's special. And even though he's going to die tomorrow, he wouldn't have traded her time with her for anything in the world. And that's sort of it for the most part. A lot of what this movie is, in regards to John Smith, is him effectively learning a lesson that it didn't feel like he needed to learn. Like he's like, I didn't expect to find anybody here. You're not as savage as I thought you were. And Pocahontas sort of gives a look. Says like, yeah, I'm the savage. Yeah, you're gonna come here, tear up my land, take my resources, and some other stuff I can't talk about because it's a Disney film, and I'm the savage. Okay. And that's kind of it for him. It's a bit sad because he feels like a regression. And he is our first Disney prince who is not an actual Disney prince. Like, I could make this a Disney royalty interlude because Pocahontas, our titular character, is a princess, technically. And with that in mind, I had to sort of look at it like, well, if he's part of the main line, technically, then he's a regression back to the pre-Renaissance era. He's sort of a fusion of Eric and any of the other three originals, in that his story is more about, I've met this person, but it's not as interesting as you'd think it would be, because I don't have much to do other than be the guy that learns. Pocahontas is a bit of an oddity. She means a lot to a lot of people. A lot of the people I talk to who love this film, like really love this film, talk about how important it was that Pocahontas was there, that she looked like them to some extent, that sort of representation angle. And I'm always a bit iffy on representation. I always feel that, it takes a bit more than that. We should always expect more than just characters that look like us on screen, which is why I don't hate Black Panther, because while I don't care about the representation angle, it's still a good movie. But within how this film is presented, Pocahontas is almost as boring as John Smith, but she's much more energetic. She's actually, as a main character should be in the Disney Renaissance, she is active, she is seeking her destiny, or whatever this alternative path is, and that's sort of been brought up. The problem is this film is very set on not really giving us any real central antagonist for us to, distaste. Like Kocoum is not built up as any bad choice. He's no Prince Ahmed or Gaston, far from it. His only real crime seems to be he's boring, which, compared to every other Disney princess, Pocahontas, it's actually pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, Belle did with Gaston, who's pretty rapey, and Ahmed's just a jerk. But the problem with Pocahontas is, like Ariel, she is very set on sort of being right. Not that she wants to prove it's right, but the universe itself is already on her side. There's no real arc for Pocahontas other than to know, like, okay, I want to do this. Grandmother Willow says, hey, I got to focus on this. I meet John Smith, and we go from there. But she is more like Belle and Jasmine in that she has this very strong relationship with her father. She really does have this sort of unique life that other princesses don't get to have. I mean, she has a friend. She has a great deal of freedom. It doesn't feel like she's obligated to get married, but this Coco guy is like, hey, he would like to, he'd like your hand in marriage. And pretty tame, pretty tame. He even went through the proper channels, went through your dad, didn't use any mind control. You got a good Pocahontas. But she wants something more, and this more has always been pretty vague. I think Belle handled it best, and Jasmine handled it best by saying she wants to marry for love. So she's not feeling anything for Cocoam. So yeah, that's all I can tell you about that. Now the problem is when she meets John Smith, because they're such, again, prolific, large figures, this can't be anything like the regular people of two different worlds meet, and there's this amazing journey going forward. This has to be a lesson. This has to be Pocahontas learning about him, which is really just, okay, he's got a metal hat, he's got I'm going to call it a boomstick because it amuses me, and he's presumably here for my gold, which I think is corn. But whatever, food is technically worth more than gold for all intents and purposes. And, it's the cultural divide to an extent as to what we exactly value as people or as cultures. And again, she's lecturing about, walking the footsteps of a stranger, understanding nature, that it's not just a tree, it's not just an animal. Here, hold this baby bear. All right? Now, see, if we were actual terrible people, that mama bear would kill us right now. But no, we're good people. We have connected. Therefore, it will not kill us. But that also was something that I heard that came under fire, was exactly how the Native American people are presented here. Now, I didn't have time to go fully in-depth on the research, but I also think that, when Disney refused help from the tribe that was Pocahontas' tribe, that was a mistake on their part, and I sort of get the idea they wanted to play this sort of close. I think they wanted to do this themselves, because, the last time they actually had Native Americans in Disney, it was, I want to say, Disney's Peter Pan with What Made the Red Man Red, and while I love that song to death, yeah, we can't go back there. Disney, we cannot go back there. Never again. Put red tape all around it. We can't go back there. Pocahontas' story is also lacking a real antagonist. I mean, yeah, we have Radcliffe, but Radcliffe is so boring. He's so boring. Like, his best line is, see how I glitter. It's like my favorite line from him. And then there's, of course, Savages. But Savages is like this really... I love group duets. Army duets are just really great. They're really great. I love the more people you sing in a war song, it's better. Look at Les Mis. But Pocahontas, as a character, I think she has one great line, which I think totally makes it all worthwhile. And it's not a very amazing line. There's not a lot of great movements to it. It's her running and going, I don't know what I can do, but I know I have to try. And that's a great line. It's sort of mentioning the fact that in times of uncertainty, we know we have to do something. She doesn't know what she can do to save John Smith. She doesn't know what she can do to stop the war, but she has to try. And I love that. I love that. It's a really great moment, little bit of a great message to people. It's a great lesson in integrity, I think. And then, of course, we go to the sequel, where John Smith has really nothing to do, but like Cocoam, he will be left behind. This time for John Rolfe, which is a bit more historically accurate. Bit more. Not a lot, but a bit more. because we can't tell that story. Disney. And Pocahontas has a very interesting little moment where she, is in Jamestown, and she's taught to conform, and then she realizes I'm not going to conform. This is who I am. Blah 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 blah. Not a savage. Blah blah blah. That's an animal. Blah blah blah. All fun and games. The Pocahontas series is flawed. It means well. I really think it does mean well, but Katzenberg, I think, did not realize this was not going to get the Academy Award for Best Picture that he wanted it to get. I think that was a mistake, but there is something to like about this. Once you sort of realize the best thing for this would be if her name wasn't Pocahontas, if his name wasn't John Smith, if this was just a story about two people from two different worlds who met, and something's going to go down. But not their love, but their friendship is going to be what saves it. We don't have to make every group a couple here, and that's sort of an oddity. We'll get to a film that does this better, like next, or at least handles this sort of interesting idea better, the way I'm talking about it. But just sort of imagine it. Her name isn't Pocahontas. His name's not John Smith. You know, and we just sort of go with a pure orchestration. No dialogue, and we just have this great music, great visuals, tell the story, and I think we'd have something really awesome. But we didn't. Coming up to our parallels, I have to say I spent some time thinking about it. So I have two for John Smith. I might have two for Pocahontas, but for John Smith, I thought, well, let's sort of go of two minds. If we're of the opinion that John Smith is just so boring that he needs at least some wit, then the best option would have to be Phoebus from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Phoebus is a great choice because this movie needs some dry wit. It does. There's no dry wit in this movie, and Phoebus is nothing if not dry wit. And I love him for it. It's like the only good thing about him and his taste in women. Another choice would be, as we mentioned before, Zach from Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. The reason that works, again, as we talked before, Zach is, well, no, actually, Zach's not a good choice. It's a terrible choice. Nathan Algren from The Last Samurai. I think if we really wanted to make this an interesting story, we should have given him more of a tragic story. Let's say that, he, like Nathan Algren in The Last Samurai, has some PTSD to deal with. He's seen some stuff, and coming here, understanding these people, have given him a new level of clarity, a new level of respect. I think that would work. Give John Smith an arc. Next up, for Pocahontas, I want to say Krista just because we said Zach. And what works with Krista that didn't work with Pocahontas is we see a definite arc of Krista stepping into the role of her teacher. I think that's really great. It's the sort of mentor role, which, I think Pocahontas probably should have tried to focus on. The idea that she would have to take leadership positions after her father. We wouldn't really get that happening until, Brave? And we get hints of it in Aladdin, but for the most part, no. And after that, it would have to be Elisa Maza from Gargoyles. So I think what people really like about Pocahontas is she is that princess of color, which was not a big thing. I don't think there's some huge cabal, but, things happen, whatnot. And Elisa Maza is a perfect example of an amazing character who just happens to be a person of color. She is her mother is black, her father is Native American, and she comes from a family that honors both. That's really great. At the same time, though, we see Elisa is a very strong, nurturing character. I think, if anything, Pocahontas should have been the sort of the guide she was in this movie, but a bit more vulnerable in some ways. Like, until Kocoum's death, I never really get the idea that Pocahontas is sort of vulnerable on anything, But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I'm missing about this that I haven't talked about. And I'm sure there's a Pocahontas, film buff here that knows this film inside and out, outside of the Kocoum gifts or the amazing song Savages. And I'm just missing something. If you are one of those people who saw this video, leave that down in the comments section. If you're new here, feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Leave down your opinions of the movie and suggestions, and I will catch you all later for the bells. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. May your fandom serve you well.